Hello everybody, welcome to stpete.net meetup. I'm your host John Calloway. Clayton Hunt is running our video for us this evening. Hopefully we're streaming live to Twitch and to YouTube.
And you can hear us?
And hopefully there's audio this time, so if there's not, be sure to comment and yell at us and we'll fix it.
I'm sure they'll go around to that.
Sure, why not? If you haven't noticed, we've got pizza. See? And then we got feedback going. If you haven't noticed, we've got pizza and drink in the back room thanks to Tech Systems, so be sure to say hi and thank you. Thanks to Banco ZK for providing the space, and thanks to all our sponsors. We've got a book giveaway at the end of the evening, so must be present to win. We'll hand out some tickets and do a drawing afterwards. If you're interested, we'll probably grab a drink at a local establishment on your own time, so please drink responsibly. Especially if it's your first time, we'd encourage you to hang out and just chat amongst yourselves and get to know everybody in the group. We want to make sure everybody's having a good time and getting something out of the evening and getting something out of the group. So please find us on Meetup and join in the conversations there. We've also got a Facebook group, so join in the conversations there. Follow us on Twitter. We've got a GitHub account where we fork any repositories that our presenters might have for us. Of course, we've got a YouTube channel, and we're streaming to Twitch as well. So plenty of opportunities to get involved and follow us and see what's going on. We're always looking for more speakers and more interesting topics. So if you have anything in mind that you or maybe want to volunteer a coworker to speak on, we'd be happy to entertain pretty much anything. As it relates to technology, it doesn't necessarily have to be .NET, but if it's .NET focused or skewed toward .NET, then we would appreciate that. Any questions or any other announcements before we get started? Spoke with the organizers for the Orlando Code Camp. It is later this month on March 30th. So want to encourage everybody to attend. It's a great one-day free code camp in Orlando. I'll be speaking, Clayton will be speaking, anyone else going to be speaking? So plenty of other speakers in the area. I think the keynote is being presented by John Papa, who is back at Microsoft these days doing all kinds of stuff related to JavaScript. It's always a lot of fun, free to attend, free food, free swag, free t-shirts, and lots of great people to converse with. So with that,
Yeah, there's a SQL Saturday coming up in Tampa, right? In 2 weeks. 2 weeks,
probably.
yeah, I think.
SQL Saturday in Tampa. Okay.
Yeah, I think in 2 weeks. So if you do some SQL Server work, that might be a good day.
Yeah. So with that, we'll hand it over to Tim Chafee, going to talk about background processing in .NET.
Great, thanks. Hi everybody, I'm Tim, and I'm a software engineer. I work locally. I just walk 2 blocks over when I'm in the office. So a couple days a week I work from home. And I was introduced to Hangfire quite a few years ago, and that's the name of the open source library we're going to look at today. And I never really had an occasion to use it. And then I was in Bangkok for 2 years. I've been back about 8 months now, running a team of developers. And when I got there, they had like 15 services that were all running these different processes. And you know, one of the other development managers there said, "Well, have you looked at Hangfire?" And I'm like, a long time ago. So we went back and looked at it, and then we had some of the engineers actually implement it. And since I've been back, I've used it in production. I've got 3 different jobs running in production. But how many people here have had to do something, like you're a web developer, or just even maybe a Windows Forms developer, or a WPF developer, mobile app developer, but you had to do something on the server like at a certain time during the day, like maybe send a bunch of invoices over to your accounting software, or send some stuff over to your data warehouse. And you've done that maybe through a scheduled task or a service. Has anybody had to do that?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Right? And how many people here are ASP.NET or web developers? Right? And so you had to maybe step out of your domain, or you've had to do something on a single server, and you know, it kind of worked. You figured out how to get it working. You maybe wrote a service. Then you had to figure out how to schedule it and how to get it to run at a certain time, or how to run every 5 minutes, how to sleep. What about recovery? What happens when it errors? What about logging? What happens when you know, it doesn't run, or it does run and then you want to do something else and you want to do a workflow? Hangfire does all of that for you. It's an open source library. It runs in .NET. It runs in .NET Core. Last time I did this presentation, I deployed the website to a Raspberry Pi, and it was running Hangfire. Today we're just going to do it on my machine. because I wanted to focus a little bit more on the code. So, you know, we're going to get into that. I think I've got maybe 7 slides, and then mostly we're going to code tonight. We're just going to go through. We're going to implement Hangfire. We're going to use Mini Profiler. How many people have heard of Mini Profiler? There we go. Just a couple? Yeah, Mini Profile is kind of cool. I'll show that to you. But we're going to use that to kind of show the timing it takes to return stuff. Because one of the things I've seen people do sometimes too, if they're a web developer, is just write that long-running code right in their web page, right? And then it takes a little longer to return. So we're going to kind of demo that, show how Hangfire handles that. I kind of was talking about why we need Hangfire, what it is. We're going to go ahead and create a .NET Core website, add Hangfire, we'll add Mini Profiler. We'll look at the dashboard. So it comes with a full interactive dashboard that you can look at. As a matter of fact, I'm going to call out Wayne over here. I work with Wayne, and I didn't have a dashboard on our menu. He went ahead and added it the other day, so you can just go to the dashboard, and we'll go ahead and do that in this project here too. So Wayne's another software engineer at Ethos Risk, and so we're working about 8 months together now.
As long as you've been there.
Yeah, it's great. We're having a lot of fun. Then we'll go into background jobs, the different types of background jobs, why we need them, errors, retrying, authorization for the dashboard. We'll look a little bit at IIS configuration, because you do have to change your IIS configuration if you want this to always be running. Because, you know, how many people know the number 1,720? Why it's relevant? Yeah, exactly. Apple Recycle, good. So IIS by default is set up to shut down the application in every certain number of minutes, 1,720, which is like 29? I don't remember the number. It's more than 24. And so it recycles automatically. It stops it. So if it's running, also it's set to automatically stop. And if you have background jobs running, after a certain amount of activity, automatically stop. If you have background jobs running, you don't really want that to stop because your background jobs are running in that process space. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll go over review and questions. It's going to be all interactive. If I'm going too fast, let me know. If you have questions, just shout them out and we'll answer them. Hopefully I won't get too sidetracked and then can circle back around. So what is Hangfire? Like I said, it's background processing in .NET. You have a couple different types of jobs, but the nice thing is like you can just fire and forget. You know, different things you can use it for. Maybe I've got to integrate some information from my production system with my CRM, right? I want to, you know, put some tasks in my CRM. I want to add some new contacts into my CRM, or I want to update contacts for my system. Delayed jobs. What if I just need a job to start 20 minutes from now or 30 minutes from now? What if I need a job to run every 5 minutes or just once a day, once a night? That's reoccurring jobs. What if I need to do a continuation? I need to go export all this data to my data warehouse, and then when that's done, I need to run a bunch of reports and then have those reports. You could do that with SQL Server, right? You could do that SQL Server as a scheduler built in. You could do it with scheduled tasks. But one of the nice things about this is what if you're running in the cloud and you only have access to a website and be able to deploy a web app? You don't have access to scheduled tasks in your SQL Server. You don't have access to, because you're running your SQL database in the cloud, or your data is in a NoSQL database in the cloud. So this lets you all do it within, you know, IIS and ASP.NET, or in the cloud in your web app. You can also run this in a service, a Windows service. Still has a lot of advantages in a Windows service because it gives you that cron, all these different kinds of jobs, gives you the automatic logging. It will use any of the standard built-in loggers like Log4net, Nlog, Serilog. You know, it's got a list of them on our website. But the continuations are nice. I export this data, I run a bunch of reports after that, and then I email somebody that's done once that's done. So I can have 3 jobs that all continue once the other ones are finished. Batches let you do multiple things together, and then you can do batch continuations. Those are pro only. We're not going to get into that. I don't have the pro, and I don't, you know, I just want to touch on the open source parts of it. But I wanted to note that they are there, and you can purchase the pro version of it. Another thing is it's reliable and persistent. So it uses a SQL store, SQL database. I think it can use Redis as well, but I'm not positive on that. I would check on their website. But it stores the data. So as soon as you've scheduled a job, if the server does go down and reboot, that scheduled job and task is still there. All the job history is there. We'll look at that in the dashboard and the UI. But so also it logs all the errors and has retries, so reliable. If something has an error, it has an exception, it'll log the exception into your logging library. That's your standard one that you're using already in IIS, which if you're not, maybe this would have encourage you to add one if you were going to use it. And then it also retries. You can configure how many times it retries as well. So, and then if you don't like something about it, it's open source, so you can change it. Some other things about this, if you have web farms. So one of the things I've seen is I got a bunch of critical services that run to import and export data and do these batch jobs or scheduled tasks, and I have them all running on my one server, and that server dies. What do you do then? Oh, I quickly spin up another server and throw it on that server. Or maybe I've got another server sitting there with all these things on it, but they aren't active and running. Maybe I've taken the time to have it set up as a cluster and automatically fail over the services, but that's kind of hard. With this, it runs on web farms, so if I've got 2 servers on my web farm, that's going to run jobs on both of those, and if one goes down, it'll keep all the other jobs and have them run on the other web server. It'll move them. Well, not really move, but since it's using SQL Server and it's got the storage there, it can pick the jobs up and run them on the other server. And if you have 10 servers, it's going to distribute the load across the 10 servers. Yeah, I think that's about it. Any questions at this point?
So let's say you have a X app. Can you add like 10 contacts? I mean, program to add 10 contacts. Any app.
Yeah, this will run. You can run in a console app. It can run a Windows service. ThinkFire can run in that. So I'm not sure I'm exactly following your question.
Let's say like you need to add 5 contacts to Excel.
5 contacts to Excel.
Yeah, 5 rows of contacts.
Okay.
Also, can you use it?
You can do anything you can do in .NET. So yeah, with the OpenXML library, you can edit Excel spreadsheets, and you could go ahead and do that right in your .NET code, and then schedule that function. So the idea is you're going to write a function, and then that function is going to get called on a schedule, whether you want it to run once immediately, whether you want it to run in 20 minutes, right, once, whether you want it to run every 5 minutes or once a day at a specific time. So it's basically going to call that function when you tell it to call that function based on the job type.
So, I mean, the scaling with the web farms part seems super awesome. The question I have is, it's smart enough to know not to run the same job twice for your farm because it's using the same SQL store?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's ridiculously awesome. Because I've done that first part where you have spinning up backup servers and services that aren't running. That's the nightmare. So.
Yeah, it's smart enough to know to kick off the job on one server. You can set, I haven't got too deep into that, but I think you can set a max parallelism setting for different things, and it gets pretty in-depth if you have more complicated jobs. I haven't really had the experience to work with those yet, so I haven't looked that deep. But it does know when a job started, where it started, and if it finished successfully. And it all stores all that in a SQL Server. All right. So what are we on? I think I got it covered by my magnifier. Slide 5 of 7. So we're going to code some now. So only 5 slides before coding. So I'm just going to turn around a little bit and pull my development environment over here. We are going to do File, New. New product. Oh, I'm not using my mouse over here. I was like, luxury. I have an external mouse earlier before we started. So we'll pick a .NET Core, ASP.NET Core web app, and I'm going to call it, everybody hang back now. Everybody just hang back. Did I say bank or back? I said bank.
We're in a bank.
Yeah, it must be rubbing off a little bit.
It's quite neat where we are.
All right.
You can duplicate your screen too.
I can, but I'm going to do some cut and paste of code and stuff. So we're going to pick a Razor web application. We're going to go ahead. Right now, I have .NET Core 2.2 installed here, but they changed the templates, and I did my demo against the 2.1, so I'm going to do a 2.1 job, and then I'm going to change it to 2.2. I want to go in there anyways and change some settings. So we're going to change the authentication because we want to do this later, and I'm just going to say individual user accounts. And then I'm going to say OK. Great. So we've got your standard ASP.NET Razor web application here with 2.2. I'm going to select properties. And then I'm going to change it to .NET Core 2.2. I am going to the Build Advanced tab. If you want to get the features in C# 7.x, meaning a minor version, you have to change this so you can go to the minor version. Otherwise, it defaults to the C# features in 7.0. I like some of the 7.2 and 3 features, so I'm going to change that. And then I'm going to come down to Debug, and we're going to turn off SSL. Because I don't want to deal with certificate errors right now. Normally, you might want to have that on because we're doing authentication and authorization, which is going to pass passwords and stuff over to the wire. But we're doing all our development locally here, and hopefully they haven't, they're not logging all my network traffic. Password's not that hard either. And I think that's it. What else do we need to do here? Let's see. We need to go into our app settings. And then I'm going to jump over here and copy and paste the connection string to my Azure database. So I'm using an Azure database.
Should we not look? Otherwise.
No, it's okay. You can look. The passwords. If you can remember this password, more power to you, and then I'm going to delete the database tomorrow. So it's not a password I reuse. I use a password manager. If you don't use a passwords manager, I highly recommend it. See me after and ask why. Let's see. So, and to save you my bad typing skills, I'm just going to copy and paste some stuff. So I'm opening the final solution here, which is in my GitHub repo. And then I guess they'll clone it for the St. Pete.NET Meetup GitHub repo. I've also got the URL, the last slide. So, yeah, let's see. Whoa, that was weird. Did you break it? I'm not sure if I'm losing my mouse. Hang back, all right. So I'm just going to come in here. And that's my connection string to my Azure SQL database. And like, there's the password. So if you can know that quick, no problem. Yeah, and we should be able to run this. Well, the other thing I'm going to do real quick before we do
the
that.
video
Is I am going to manage media packages. I'm going to update a couple of packages for 2.2. Hopefully we've got a super speedy internet connection, which so far it's been really good. I thought I turned off SSL, but let's see. All right, let's go check back and see.
Got turned back on. Copy and paste it, maybe.
All right, let's try it. And there's your standard ASP.NET 2.1 template that you get when you create a .NET Core project in ASP. And it showed up on my screen over here, so we'll go ahead and turn this over here. Basically, you've got a home and about a contact. I'm going to put some buttons on here. I'm not known for my UI, so You've got to register and a login because I selected to use individual user accounts. And since this is already connected to my database and I already created a login, let's go ahead and just see if I can log in and see if everything's working. There you go, I can log in. I'm logged in. There's my user account, my profile. We're good to go. So we know we're connected to the database. We know we have authorization working. Pretty standard, right? Has everybody done something like this with a quick and dirty project to learn about it? Great. Any questions at this point? All right. So let's go ahead. Let me look at my notes and see if I've got everything. All right, let's go ahead and stop it. Go into Solution Explorer, manage NuGet packages, and we're going to go ahead and add Hangfire. You can just command line 2 with install packages, but we're just going to jump over here, browse. Like I said, this is why I'm a little copy and pasting. You don't want to have to do my typing. Oh, that's beta. Let's not do pre-release. Install that. Opens up a text file, walks you through some of the steps. All those steps are also available on the Hangfire website. Basically, they have a nice documentation. They have a quick start guide, and you can walk through a very similar setup to what I'm doing here. But, you can also, you'll see my email on the last slide. You can email me if you have any questions about it. If you're walking through this. But it's pretty similar. This is where I was saying it uses the standard login libraries. If you have any of these login libraries, like Enterprise Framework logging or Enterprise Library logging, all that, it'll automatically detect those and start logging with the Hangfire namespace. So I'll go ahead and close this. All right, and how many people here are familiar with Stack Overflow? Anybody I do my copy paste code from Stack Overflow, or find my solution pasted in here. That's what most of this code is. So, no, Stack Overflow is the one who they've created this mini profiler. It's a very cool tool, and we're going to go ahead and install it so we can see how long it takes for pages to load to kind of give us an idea of how long it takes. So I'm going to put a sleep in the code at one point to show you what would happen if we had a page that we loaded that had this in it for 30 seconds, and we'll see in mini profiler the results of that. And then we're going to go ahead and Hangfire that. Mini. It might be Stack Exchange mini profile. See, I should have looked that up. What I'll do is I'm going to jump over here and look at what the package name is. It is Mini Profiler. All right. Here we go, Mini Profiler. And we want that, and we're going to go ahead and install the Mini Profiler for Entity Framework, which is very cool because if you have SQL queries, it'll show you the queries that Entity Framework runs and how long they take. So if you ever wanted to troubleshoot what is the query that Entity Framework is generating, you can install Mini Profiler in your development environment and actually see the queries that are run. I'll show that at one point soon. This is from our good friends at Stack Exchange. All right, shout out, you see Entity Framework.
I'll be in there.
Let me just look at the other project. It's miniprofiler.entityframework. This is why command line would have been a little handier here if I'd...
Or you can Google that.
Yeah, there's this EF6, but I don't think this is it. It could be. Let's go ahead and install it.
Was your other project 2.1 versus 2.2?
No, it's 2.2. You know what I'll do is...
It wasn't updated for 2.2 yet.
That could be. I had installed it, but I hadn't upgraded it. But let me just go to... This will be easier. Let me make sure I've got the right name. This is what hung me up last time too, a different thing with Entity Frame or Mini Profiler. And like the talk isn't even about this. It's Entity Framework Core. All right. There we go. All right, got both those in there. Let's go to the Solution Explorer. And then we've got to do some things in the startup to get all this running. Basically, for Entity Framework, we just have to say you need configure services. Can everybody see this?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's go ahead and add Mini Profiler, track open connections. There's a lot of different options. I'm not going to really get into Mini Profiler too much. And then enter. Should say. Go ahead and do it not like.
Did you do a restore yet?
That's true. Thank you. Right. Well, let's jump to Hangfire real quick.
We'll probably add the reference.
You should have added it.
We're going to go ahead and add to Hangfire. So in services, we just add Hangfire, and then we're going to go ahead and say use SQL Server storage. Let's see if this one works. Yeah. Unless I missed. Let me see one more thing. I know what I missed. I didn't install the MVC for Mini Profiler. And there it is. Okay. All right, and then we have to come down and add a couple of different things for Hangfire in the configure. We have to configure Hangfire and configure. We want to tell it to use Mini Profiler, and then we want to tell it to use Hangfire Server. And that's pretty much all we need to do to have it working and running. but we don't have any jobs. We don't have the dashboard configured, so it's really just in our app now. Files, it loads. We actually see Mini Profiler right here. It's coming up. It's telling us how long it took the page to load. Like here's my machine name, date and time. You know, it took 895 milliseconds. And if we refresh it, it should take less, 33 milliseconds, right? So we can kind of see how long it's taken the page to load. It's kind of cool when I ran this in the Raspberry Pi, .NET Core, it all worked. Mini Profiler, Hangfire, everything. It was slow, I'll give you that. It was very slow, and you could see the difference in Mini Profiler. All right, a couple more. I hope I hit F5 in the right project. So I was surprised that Mini Profiler showed up because I thought I had to do a couple more things to have it show up in there. So let's just double check. Yeah, okay, so Hangfire, it's hang back, and it's not in there. So we'll go ahead and finish the few things we have to do. You're just gonna kind of, let's see. There's a view imports, and we have to add it to that. So we're just going to add a tag helper here so that we get the Mini Profiler tags when we're working on our Razor pages. And then in our standard layout, we just want to add Mini Profiler in the body. Let's try that now. Here we go. So now we're in the Hangback project, the new one, and we've got Mini Profiler. So we'll know how long everything takes. So what we're going to do real quick is add the Hangfire dashboard, and we'll show that Hangfire is working. So to do that, all we have to do in the project, in Hangback, in the startup, is use Hangfire dashboard after we use the server. And now I have to remember where the dashboard URL is. I think it's Hangfire. I customized the URL, so it's just another obfuscation. And if I can't remember where it is, we'll go ahead and just customize the URL real quick. There it is. It's in Hangfire. So here's a dashboard. Hangfire is up and running. It's a nice little dashboard. Now you notice I'm not logged into the site, so anybody can get this. Later we'll add some authentication so only admins can see it. But it tells you, you can go look at your jobs, and you can see, how many have failed, how many you've deleted, how many have succeeded, how many are currently processing, how many are scheduled, how many are queued. You can go here and look at how many your reoccurring jobs that you've added. We'll go ahead and add one of those. And then it says 4 servers. They're all the same name. I really only have one. It's because it stores the servers in the database, and every time you start this up, it sticks a server entry in there. This will go back to 1 later. But generally it has a certain timeout, and then as you can see, we've got 20 workers per server. Right now we obviously only have 1. So all right, cool. Let's go ahead and add a job. Now what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to just send an email, because that's kind of the easiest way I can have to focus on Hangfire and not what are we doing with Hangfire. So I've got this little program called Papercut. If you haven't heard of it, if you send emails, or you do any development with emails, I highly recommend it. It's an SMTP server that sits on your machine and runs, and it just captures all the emails, and you've got a little, screen here that it'll listen on SMTP port 25, you send to it, and it gives you a notification. So we'll see the emails coming in here, and we'll kind of see the time it takes. So. Just going to create a class really quick. Over here. So all this does is send an email, uses the local server, takes a subject, and then in here I've got this task delay to simulate a long-running process. So one of the things that sometimes you have to do in ASP.NET, let's say you want to check your inventory on your factory or in your warehouse, and then be able to update your inventory on the fly, but you kind of want to not do that. It takes a little while to do that process, right? Figure that out. So you don't want to make the user wait for that. So what you could do is go schedule a background task to run, right? So this is kind of simulating this long-running thing, talking to an external system. Maybe you've got a web API to check shipping prices with UPS, and it takes a while. You can update that through an AJAX call and get that data in the background. But maybe on your first blush, you didn't do that. The first time you wrote this, you didn't do that, and it takes a while. And we're going to simulate that really quick. Any questions so far? You don't have to raise your hand if you are. All right, so let's go ahead and open the About page. Thank you.
Oh boy. Just like it work.
Just going to add a little bit of HTML code here. So I'm just adding an HTML form, some buttons, and we're going to implement the code behind the button in the code behind. I'm going to go ahead and just take these out now. We'll go ahead and add those. Back in as we need them. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a handler in the About page code behind. It's going to handle this mail now. And this is going to kind of simulate a long-running process. So I'm just recording the time we started this. Let's see. Oh, I know why. This is basically the program that calls my mailer and sends mail and just logs the start time. All right. So let's go see how well this works. This might be, I'm calling an external API for UPS to get shipping rates, and this is the first time I'm doing it, so I'm just coding it in there, I'm throwing it in there, and I come up here and I go to my About page, and I click Send Mail. Wow, got this hourglass. This really is taking a long time. I think I can take another drink. Maybe I should make that delay 15 seconds so we don't have to wait 30 seconds multiple times. It's not going to matter that much in a minute. Oh, I got a notification. Let's see. Oh, I must have minimized. My mailer, paper cut. Look at that. Welcome to Hangfire. Send it at 7:43:32, and at 7:44:02, 30 seconds later, it delivered it. But look at this. What is Mini Profiler telling me? It took 30,269.2 milliseconds. What kind of user experience is that? Right, I think we focused a lot on user experience when I was at Agoda, and after 1 second to 3 seconds, I don't remember the numbers, it's probably always changing. 2 seconds, people are just abandoning your site, right? Now, granted, if you're like at a university or something and you have a captive audience, you can make them wait as long as you want. But it's not really a good user experience, right, to wait 30 seconds. None of us probably like to wait 30 seconds. I don't know about you, I'm very impatient. So we can actually have this run in the background. So let's stop this and just set up a job to queue it. Not on any schedule or anything, but just say, go run this in the background. We'll go to our code bind. It's pretty easy to send something running in the background. Now when I get those squigglies, I'm just hitting Alt-Enter. If you don't know, an Alt-Enter is just a keystroke to say, give me the refactoring for this. It'll also give you a hint and say, what using are you missing in Visual Studio? That's just told me I was missing a using for Hangfire, and it'll automatically enter it. So it's kind of an easy way to just figure it out. You don't have to try to, I think I'm not sure which release, but it might be 2019 where they'll actually even try to tell you when you're missing references. Is that in 2017 or 19? Does anyone know?
2019 has a...
Yeah, I don't know, but 2019 is released when? April 2nd, and you were having a meetup here for the launch event, April 2nd, so if you're interested in that, maybe we can have an install party too, and I'll install it that day. But it will tell you missing references too, which is really nice. Would have helped me a little bit earlier with the Mini Profiler maybe. It's like you're missing this. But basically all I have to do is say background job in queue, and I'm just sending it this func that says mail async. I'm giving it the subject of the queue and the started time. So let's try this and see what happens. Let's see what kind of user experience we get. Wow, 591 milliseconds. That was a lot better than 30 seconds, right? I mean, half a second. What if we do it again? Even a little bit faster. Not much, but a little bit faster. And then let's just jump over here to dashboard. You're right, Hangfire, thank you. Well, there's the first one. As you can see, I already got the page back, but and there's the second one. You'll notice the subject here. Let's open this up a little bit wider. I changed the subject. The first one was direct. That means I did it right in the ASP page, right? It took 30 seconds to run. We still have the timeout in here, and you can see that because we started the job at 7:47, but 30 seconds later it actually sent it. So it still ran it in the background, but our page came back right away. So all we did is we used Hangfire and said, go do this thing. I don't care when you finish, and let me tell the user we started it. So does anybody think of a use case they could use that for? I mean, maybe you had to do a report to somebody, right? How many people have reports that take a long time to run?
Everyone.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a big problem for a lot of people. You could just kick the report job off and then notify the user when it's done, because you can have either a continuation, or as part of the job, you could have it notify the user when it was done. All right, we can go in here, and we've got jobs that have succeeded. Let's refresh this. We can click into the job. We can see what the job was. We can see how long it took to run the job. You can see this job took 30 seconds. Why? Because over here, in my mail code, I tell it to delay 30 seconds. So that's the job. That's what we're running on the background. So it just sits there waiting, which, think about that as a long-running task, many, many different steps. Or a lot of work, or calling an API that takes a while to return. So this is just simulating that. Now, what if you had something where you wanted a reminder? Let's say you wanted to, somebody said, I want a reminder, right? Remind me in the website, pop up a reminder in 20 minutes.
So here, what happened is like on line 33, the Hangfire worked that line already. And then when the user wanted the email to be sent, then line 34 run.
No, this is just me simulating a long-running task. Pretend this delay is go import some data into Salesforce, right? Pretend this is a long-running task. So this whole function really ran in the background, right? So we just said start this job.
My question is, I mean, you send the email when the user clicks the button.
No, it didn't.
Oh, so you send an email, right?
No, I say, go do this thing that takes a long time. Which one is wait 30 seconds, and then send the email.
So when you do so I don't know the difference then.
When I all it did was schedule this task.
Well, the first time I clicked, I just said await mail async, right? So I said, go do this. See this send hello mail async? That's what takes 30 seconds. So it took 30 seconds. The second time I said, just add this job, mail async, right? Add this job right here to Hangfire, and go ahead and do it as soon as you can. So it started it. It took 30 seconds. It's this long-running process, right? We can change it to 15 seconds if we want.
So how he did it faster?
Say it again.
When you did click, it was like 400.
Because we enqueued it. We told Hangfire to do it, so it did it. I'll show. Remember when I showed you all the jobs? It had 20, right? It had a queue of 20. Mm-hmm. That's 20 threads that are sitting there waiting to run this stuff. So Hangfire said, go run this on its own thread, in this thread pool.
Well, my question is, I don't want the email to be sent. Only when the user do the click. Well, all the work was done already. But then when the user do the click, okay, now everything's about to be almost ready, and then okay, I do it.
Don't focus on mail. Mail is the simulation. Focus on this is a long-running process.
Okay.
All right, so it's not mail, like, because you might not want mail sent, right? The mail is just an easy example with PaperCut to show you the difference between when you asked for it and when it actually ran. So the next thing we're going to do is let's say I wanted to get a reminder on the website in 20 minutes, or an email reminder in 20 minutes. I can actually queue a job, but tell it to run in about 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and do that. We're not going to do 20 minutes though, because we don't want to wait 20 minutes. We're going to come over here, and we're just going to say background job schedule, right? So this is a scheduled job. It's just going to run once, unless it fails, because remember, if it fails, it doesn't auto retry. And we're going to say from 1 minute. So let's go ahead and here and just so a use case for this might be, like I said, something where you want a reminder, or you want to do something in X amount of time from now. So you pass a time span and say, when do you want to do it from now? So if we say do it 1 minute from now, we have a 30-second delay. What should the times be?
1:30 and 90 seconds.
All right, let's start a delayed job. Again, came right back in half a second. Let's go over to the dashboard, see what's there. Right. Got one scheduled job. What did we just do? We said schedule a job, right? Scheduled a few seconds ago. It's going to run in a few seconds. And it's still calling the about model.mail async, right? Which is our function. We just said, go run this function. Run it in 1 minute from now. So it's just, think of this as a delayed job.
Yeah, I have some services, for instance, that I want to check every now and then, make sure they're still running. This would be a good
Well, that we're going to get to, because that, if you want to do something every 15 minutes, you can do that too. So this is a delayed job. It's a scheduled job that runs once, but you can also do reoccurring jobs. We're going to get to that next. So I think I owe you a drink.
Yeah, you do.
Good segue. So let's go ahead and refresh this. This does refresh automatically. I don't know the timing. I don't remember the timing. It might be every minute or something. It will refresh automatically. So you'll notice if you put this in your website and you sit on this page, even if your page has a timeout of logging out automatically after 20 seconds, there's a great page to sit on and keep you logged in the whole time. Because it refreshes, calls, keeps your session going, keeps your forms authentication cookie going, whatever it is you're using for auth. So it's kind of nice. Look at that. I just got another email. Where are all these emails coming from? They tell you when you present, turn all your notifications off, but I kind of had to leave them on for this one. And here we go. And you'll notice the subject has changed as I changed it in the job. I said it's called scheduled now. And we started it at 7:54:34, and at 7:56 is when it actually was sent. So it waited a minute. It had the delay of 30 seconds in there, so a minute, 30 seconds later, approximately. It's not an exact thing. You wouldn't want to like trade stock on the timing in this, okay? It's not exact. It's, it's not even a real-time operating system, let alone a real-time language, C#. All right, so the next thing we have is we wanted to do something, you mentioned it, a reoccurring job, right? Who's familiar with cron or crontab? A few people, more than half the room. So I'm going to probably butcher this so anybody else can pipe in, but it's basically a way in Linux, it was in Linux and you were able to schedule something to run. It was a way to very succinctly put some different pieces of information together and say, run every 5 minutes on the hour, run once a month, run on the 31st of the month, run on the first Thursday of every month, run on the last Wednesday of every month. And that's what Hangfire uses for reoccurring jobs. is cron, but they've got a nice little add-in to help you figure it out. There's also tons of information on the web if you want to schedule, do something. Cron's kind of to me like regex, unless you're doing it all the time. You're probably like, oh, what's that regex I need to make sure it's an email address? Cron's the same for me. I don't use it all the time, so what's that cron I need? The nice thing is that there's a nice little piece in here. We'll go ahead and take the next item. And then we'll come over here. So you notice again, I changed the subject to reoccurring, right? So I'm just doing a reoccurring job. So we started with, I'm not used to having, I'm going to go over here because I'm not used to having this big of a zoom in. We said the first one was just background job in queue, and we said the subject was in queue. Then we said background job schedule, said it was schedule from 1 minute. And now we're doing a reoccurring job, right, add or update. Now this is kind of interesting because you might want to change what the job does, and you can do that on the fly by doing add or update. The job will stay in there, it's going to add or update it, but we're just saying there's a reoccurring job, and here's the library I was talking about, the cron. You can just say cron, minute interval. This should send emails every 3 minutes. This is why I'm using Papercut and not email. I don't want to get. Has anybody ever woke up in the morning and had like 3,000 alarm emails? This could do that if you make a mistake. Papercut will save you, from that potentially if you're doing development and doing that. So let's go ahead and run this. And this is what I'm mostly using, and this is what would replace all my services. Every 15 minutes, once a day, at 3 a.m., whatever it is, run this. So let's go to our About page, schedule job. Again, it took a little bit longer, still less than a second. Now we can go to reoccurring jobs up here, and there's our job, About Model Mail Async every 3 minutes. We're going to run when was it created a few seconds ago. Now one of the nice things is I've had to do this. I set something into production and then I scheduled the job and then I realized, oh man, it's running every minute instead of every 10 minutes. You could just delete it here and then re-enqueue it, but then you can delete the job from here. Another cool thing is you can also go into your jobs and any that failed or succeeded. Like let's say you had one that failed and you wanted to redo it. You could just click on one of these and re-queue the job, whether it's failed or succeeded. So I've had an issue where trying to sync some data with Salesforce, I only have it retrying twice at night because I don't want to get a lot of alarms. And then in the morning I'm like, I don't know, it didn't work last night, but it's not super time sensitive. I clicked re-queue the job and it worked. I knew I wanted to retry it because it couldn't talk to Salesforce. That's why it failed. Salesforce just said, we're not here right now. So having this interface to do it was really nice. All right, in about a minute. Any questions while we wait? Who thinks they might find this useful to be able to schedule some stuff in SQL or in ASP.NET? Thanks, Wayne. A big wave and a smile from Wayne. So, yeah, this is, the other thing about writing services, which you could use Hangfire in a service if you didn't have ASP.NET or you didn't want to run it in your web app, and you still have to worry about, the server farms and everything else. But, service, you have to understand the service base and on start and on stop for the service and the interface that they use and, how to interact with services. One of the things about services, when you call, you don't want to do a lot of work in the on start event right? As a web engineer, right, somebody who's maybe a full stack engineer, I don't really want to worry about that. Plus, in the cloud, you don't have access to that a lot of times unless you're running a virtual machine. So this allows you to do everything you want right in your web application.
So what happens if your job is supposed to run, but the app pool is restarting?
Yeah, that's why we configure IIS to not restart. We have IIS set to always run. You can actually do that in cloud now too. In Azure, you can say always run. If it's starting, I haven't tested that fully. I know that it's stored in SQL Server, and if it didn't successfully run, it will restart it when your app pool restarts. The issue might be if you got halfway through doing some stuff, did you roll it back, that type of thing. So if you have a big long job that you're doing an alert, lots of steps, right? You might want to be able to roll back or have checkpoints or have something where you're recording what step you're on and where you need to restart or what data you need to check. So
outside of like deleting jobs, is there a way to like just stop them? Like let's say there's a recurring job and we say, hey, we're doing a deployment, I want it running. Is there a way to do that in here, or we just gotta pretty much say?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think there's any way to do it out of the box, but it's open source. So you could potentially, it's open source.net, .NET standard. So you could potentially make a change and even do a pull request. So I'm going to repeat myself. I said this earlier because I did say it to somebody. I just wasn't sure if it was to the group or in person. But this did not have authorization on the dashboard when my team in Bangkok went to work on it. And we just did a pull request to add authorization because there's no way we're going to put this in production where anybody can see these pages. So I don't remember if they accepted that pull request, but then I know when I went to go use it, they already had authorization, so it was great. But I know our team did do a pull request to contribute back to open source and add that authorization to the open source component. So if it didn't do that, perhaps you could do it and just say pause this job. Like have a pause feature.
I can see stuff doing it like a part of a CI/CD pipeline. Since you have SQL, you've got the jobs auto-registering the code. Like you can dance around that and delete them and reinitialize them on a startup kind of.
So what I do is because it's add or update, like we saw, I always do an add or update when my web app starts, because it won't. If it's already there, it's just going to update it. Right, and I built a configuration, so I have my own hangflyer.config XML, and it reads that configuration, and it has a list of jobs, and then it goes in and it's a little more complicated than this. If I change that config, the cron is actually in the config. So if I change that cron, the next time the app starts, it does an add or update on that reoccurring job, and instead of saying run at 5 a.m., it'll say run at 6 a.m. And in code, you can remove the job. So you could, on app shutdown, your app pool stop, you could have it remove the jobs if you wanted it to. All right, let's go look at our mail real quick. We have our reoccurring mail, right? It should have, been 3 minutes and 30 seconds, and sure enough, it was, because we said start. Now the next one should come in and say 8, and then it should say 8:06. It should say 6 minutes, because we said run every 3 minutes. Almost any minute now. Right? It just ran a few seconds ago. There it is. And then we started it at 8:06, right? Because this is the second run. And I record the start in this, when they actually click when I added or updated the job, I recorded that start time. And then when we actually send the mail, I'm recording the send time. So that start time of 8 is going to be fixed. That's when the job was first added to reoccur. Any questions at this point?
Like email notification.
So what I've done is we run on AWS, and we use CloudWatch, which is you can do alerts on your logs. So we use Log4net because our app's it's a little older. It's a web forms app that we're introducing MVC. As a matter of fact, that's what Wayne did. He figured out how to start adding partial views and MVC in there. And so we've been following his pattern to do that and do some more of that interactive stuff with partial views, Ajax, and some of the callbacks there. we were using Log4net, so we're using that library. It's Log4net, right? Not nlog. Yeah. And so the cool thing about, and I don't have it here in this demo, but if you already have a logging library in your web app, it'll automatically log to that. It'll automatically log when you have a job failure. So we can go ahead and simulate a job failure real quick. We can just throw an exception, and we'll show that. And then I have CloudWatch monitoring the logs for a certain text, and it sends an email automatically when it finds that text. So that's one way you could do it if you have something that monitors your logs. Another way you could do it is, see, I owe you a drink now if you come out with us, because we're going to segue into continue with. Another way you could do it is continue with, which is a job that runs after another job. So let's go ahead and do that.
Plants in the audience.
I don't know, like the demo gods are like, you know, I know we screwed a little bit with your head with the, you know, mini profiler, but after that, we're going to give you some really good ones because that was perfect. So. Go over this code in a second, but let's go over here.
So if you had a lot of code that you were executing, you would just add another project to this solution and fire it off from there?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you want to do it.
How complicated you want things to be?
I mean, we have one project. We already had kind of a structure when I got there. We have one project with our entity framework and a few other things. So I just added some of the classes to that and hang-fired that. And I created, like I said, my own configuration, a startup, and I call that configuration. And basically, you can add reoccurring jobs with very little code change. And that's in one DLL, right? That I could use from a service, I could use in the app, but then we reference that from our web app. So I do have a little bit of configuration in the web app just for the startup.
Right.
Basically. So here, what we're dealing with is we're saying background job in queue, right? Which, if you remember, is just start automatically, right? Just run this on the background, right? We don't want to make the user wait. And then I say continue with. Now you notice I'm getting the ID of that job that we enqueued. And I'm saying continue with this job. Only on succeeded state. Remember how you said if it fails? Well, on any finished state, right? So I can say continue with this no matter what. And then I can send off this job finished, potentially. I can maybe, I would probably have to store something in the database and, you know, what happened with that previous job and then look it up. But it's, you know, the beauty of this for me is that it's all just .NET code too, right in your web app. So anything you can do in .NET, you know, we've got Entity Framework, like I was mentioning, with Hangfire. We interact with our database. You can store stuff in your database. I do recommend you setting up your own database just for Hangfire and don't put it, even though it uses its own namespace in the database, I would recommend putting your own just because you don't want, it does do a lot of scanning of the database and it does some very verbose logging, which you can turn down. Once you get it running, I would recommend maybe turning the logging down too.
Okay, so based on that job continuation option enum, you can't do branching. You can't be like, if it succeeded, do this task. If it's failed, do this task.
No, you'd have to record that yourself. So what I do is I would, like I was saying earlier, like if you have a multi-step job, you might want to record some of the steps in the database. You might want to just write something to your database or, you know, your NoSQL, you know, Cosmos DB, whatever you want, and just say, hey, you know, this is the status of this job. And then the next job can check on that status and send a success or a failure email. I didn't do that. I just used the CloudWatch with AWS, and it's so easy to set an alarm up. It was, you know, I'll admit it, I'm a lazy developer, right? If the system can do it for me, I want the system to do it for me. The code you don't have to write is the code you don't have to support at 3 a.m. when it breaks.
That's what he's for.
All right, so let's go ahead and run this. and then we're going to set up the dashboard, set up authorization with the dashboard. We'll also look at what happens when a job fails. We'll create a failure condition on purpose. Oh wow, that one took a little longer, 1.5 seconds. Still not 30 seconds though, right? And usually it runs faster when it's been up and running for a little bit. So let's go to our dashboard. See, now it says 2 servers instead of 4, but we got 20 workers. It gets a little confused with servers when you're doing this debugging. We still have our recurring job running if you remember. So you notice I stopped the server and then I restarted it. This is the persistence we were talking about. It remembered that recurring job was there and it started running it as soon as it says I'm supposed to run every 3 minutes. As soon as the server came back up, it ran. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Under our jobs, we should see one that's processing. That's the one I just said go and continue with. Number 11 is, and you'll see 11 and 12. Right, 12 is, I think, the continue with. Let's go look. Oop, nope, see, that was a reoccurring, so. See, there's our continue, which was 11, which is kind of nice. You can go in here and do a little looking in. Another nice thing is, we'll see in a second, is when we get an error, it actually lists the exception in this dashboard, so you can go see what happened without having to comb through a log. Let's go see, that was number 11. Let's look at 10. And 10 was the in queue with, and then 11 was the continuation. So let's look at our email. That is not our email. I minimized it, didn't I? There we go. So we started the server back up and our recurring job happened, but in between we had the in queue with and then the continue. Now you'll notice the in queue with started at 8:12 because we recorded the time the minute we clicked on the button, and it's the same time in the continue with because we passed the same time into both functions to mail when we click the button. It's just this one didn't go until 30 seconds after this one. So 8:13:58, 8:13:27. That's why I have that 30-second wait in there. Simulate this long-running process, right? But you can see also the difference in the time between these two. So that one started as soon as this one finished. So 8:13:27, it enqueued that continuation, and then 30 seconds later we got this job. So I'm not using continuations in production yet. I could see where it would be useful. Go do some stuff with some data, and then once all that's done, maybe run a report. Could allow you to do a little bit, maybe unit test a little easier, not have this one big function, but have smaller functions that you continue with. Or maybe, you know, a good project would be add the on failure to the enum and only do something on failure. Because, you know, I mean, I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I started, you know, when the internet was in its infancy, and now you can search anything on the internet, but it's even more beautiful to be a developer now because open source. I mean, with everything open source, we can build on the shoulder of giants. We can see how some of the just amazing developers in this field code and you know, learn. So, I mean, I look at open source just to learn stuff sometimes.
You mentioned testing. How is Hangfire with testing?
So I'm going to go back and show the website for that because let's see, there's something here for testing. I'm not writing unit tests. It has a whole page on it. We don't have a lot of unit tests in our system right now. We're starting to add some unit tests in all the AWS stuff we're doing with Lambdas. Everything's fully unit tested, and it's kind of cool. It's forcing us to do it because there's no way to really run with DynamoDB and SQS and everything locally. You do it all with unit tests. So it's kind of pushing us to start with unit tests as this AWS Lambdas, which is really nice. But we don't have it that much in this project, so yeah. But it shows you kind of how to do some unit testing here, so I would defer to the website here and say, if you want to do some unit testing, check it out. I wouldn't, I don't have the best experience there to answer the question.
It's all static calls, so it's going to be just rapid interface.
Yep, and it's got an interface, yeah.
Well, you would just implement a fake interface unless they provide one,
Yeah, exactly.
and then looks pretty easy.
Yep. Yep. Yep, my background client jobs. Yeah, kind of listed here. Got it. But I would definitely just say, check it out here and see what you need to do to unit test it there. The nice thing too is for Hangfire, I don't feel the need so much to test Hangfire in used in production in a lot of systems. Since you're writing a function, you could write unit tests just for your function as well. Make sure your function's running properly. Whether it runs every 3 minutes as the cron works, I don't feel the need to test that much. All the unit tests that are built into Hangfire would cover that. So that's the other thing too, is just writing a function. I can test that outside of, when you think about it too, the interface here to the website, where I have that page that calls the method directly, you could do that for testing, right? If you didn't want to write unit tests, that you could just say, call that, see if it works, and then schedule it with Hangfire. It's another way to just do your testing. All right, let's see what happens when we cause one of these to error. What do you think? Let's try. Oh, that doesn't look very good. That's what happens if you're in a website and you have it tied in directly, right? This is the direct button I just clicked. What do you do as an end user when you see that? You go, what? Is there an 800 number here I can call to help out and tell me what's going on? Of course, it's the debug environment, so it's a little bit of a better message. But that's another nice thing about Hangfire, right? I just started a job. The user didn't see anything wrong. Now, hopefully, my logging, my CloudWatch pick this up. Oh, look, it's retrying. This is kind of cool. I got retries automatically built into Hangfire. It threw an exception. It said, I'm going to retry. I think it defaults to 10 retries. Right? So if you have something like a web service where I'm checking shipping rates and it's failing, it's going to automatically retry. Like maybe it's just a intermittent internet problem. Internet never goes down, right? And then it picks back up a little bit later. So that's one of the nice things. It automatically retries. Look at that. I got my system exception, right? I threw an exception with a text error. It's right there. I've got full stack trace. It tells me a line it blew up on, what happened. So I've seen when I talk to Salesforce an exception, with the web API. Salesforce says, I'm busy right now, right? Okay. It automatically retries. 9 out of 10 times, it works the second try, right? So that's great. When it doesn't, I've only set the retry to one other time because it does kind of pollute your log. So it automatically rescheduled it, and it's going to automatically retry the 10 times. I'm doing pretty good on time. Let's go ahead and comment this out. rerun, and actually the job's going to succeed now. So it's going to still be in that retry state and in that queue of, hey, I've got a failed job here with X number of retries. It's actually processing number 13 still. Pretty soon we should see it in 30 seconds over here. Now, hopefully it doesn't require a code fix and redeploy for you to fix the exception or the error, but you kind of get the idea. If it was a transient error, it would automatically fix itself. There we go. There's our email. This one should just be in queue. There it is in queue. It took 3 minutes for me to fix that error. 3 minutes and a little less than 3 minutes, not bad. So I tried. I don't know what the retry interval is. I don't know if that's configurable. Let's look and see, because we're going to go ahead and set to only retry once right now. So here we go. Let's close this. And then I want to show you, it did show how many times it tried to attempt the job. We might be able to tell from the time in there what it did. But if we go into the startup, we can just say add a new automatic retry attribute filter, attempts equals 1. Let's see if there's anything else in this namespace. Let's see, on attempts exceeded, looks like you might be able to do something once it exceeds the number of attempts you've configured. Default retry attempts, it's 10. I thought it doesn't really tell you the time in between. I was trying to see if there was something in here where we could maybe say how long to wait in between each retry. But I don't see that off the top of my head, so I'm not going to get sidetracked with that. This will only retry once. We don't need to go in and show it. What I want to show you is a little bit with the configuration with the use dashboard. This you can actually pass in a string that shows the default path match is hangfire. I just like a little security through obscurity. Like if somebody, script kiddies out there running a little scanner against your website looking for open hangfire, if you change the URL to let's say hangfire jobs. I think, let's make sure I've got it right. Yeah. Right, instead of going to hangfire, we'll now go to hangfire jobs. All this code's available in GitHub. You're going to clone the repo, so you'll see my GitHub. I've got a few additions to the code that I'll check in tonight, nothing major. Right, so now we go to HF jobs. If we go to hangfire, it's just not there. Let's go look at job number 13. Let's see if we have a history. Yep. So you can see here, it failed here, failed here, and then we requeued it. Retry attempt 1 of 10, gives you the error message. Failed again, retry attempt 2 of 10, test error, and then it succeeded. So it looks like maybe 1 minute in between each job, because the third job can look at the mail. Oh, it even tells you the retry count up here. That's kind of cool. Also, it does some automatic cleaning of the database. So it cleans up your old jobs and everything. As a matter of fact, you'll notice tonight we started with job 5 because I was practicing the presentation a couple days ago, and jobs 1 through 4 have actually been automatically cleaned up. All right, authorization. Basically, we just set a dashboard option. Who's allowed to access them. And then we were able to code whoever's allowed to authorize them, so we're just going to come in here and add a class. Call it that. And it's going to call this filter whenever it goes and sees who's authorized. And we're basically saying if they're authenticated, they can access it. So we're not checking a role. You could check roles here. You could say, are they in the role admin? I'm pretty sure that's what we do in our system, is if you're in the role admin. But for this demo, I'm just saying, you know, all authenticated users can see our Hangfire dashboard.
So it didn't automatically use what you configured for MVC Core?
Well, it is. So this is, it's, thing back. And then we should see it all green here. It is because it's using the authorization in MVC. So basically it's saying, do I have, I think, you know, it's claims-based stuff, and it's saying, do I have, you know, am I an authorized user? We can go ahead and, let's do this real quick, which is in the layout. All right, let's. We're just going to add a little bit of code to the layout to display. So this is using the identity user and basically the identity. When you install it with identity, it uses the ASP.NET Identity, which is a claims-based. It automatically creates some database tables. As a matter of fact, the first time you run it, there's data migration in here for the identity. It creates all the tables and everything for you automatically. It's using all of that. It's built in. So we're just basically saying, are they an authorized user? And then I'm going to come over here in the layout, basically just say, if they're signed in, I'm going to show them a dashboard option. Let me make sure I get the URL right, because I used a different one here. Go ahead and go to that, you know, give them an option to go to that page. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but we'll see. Let's see if the demo gods are with me again. I'm logged in, I see a dashboard, I'm going to log out. It disappears. So basically, if I'm not logged in, I don't show you that menu item. Let's go ahead and log in. Oh, wait, before we log in, what didn't I do? I know what I didn't do. in the startup, I didn't tell it to use those options. Right, I set the options, but all right. I don't see anything, right? Page doesn't exist for me because I'm not authorized. So we could step through that code. Let's actually do that. Let's. Basically, every time you try to access that page, it calls in here, gets the HTTP context, and says, are they authenticated? We're not authenticated, so we're not going to get access to that page. Let's log in. Authenticated. This is interesting.
Is that what you call that? I thought you called it something else.
Sorry. Not 100% used to this keyboard. I don't use it very often. There we go. So the dashboard shows up. It just, I had it on a breakpoint. It was kind of stuck there. So that's how you just add authentication to the dashboard. You could do anything you want in that filter. You could say, you know, if my name's Tim, right? If their username, if their email contains this domain, it's just .NET code, so you can do anything you want in a filter like that, and then only that, whatever runs in there, you can determine whether or not they have access to dashboard. All right, let me look at my list real quick and see if I've covered everything. Yeah, let's go check my slides. I think pretty much we've covered everything there. Are there any questions at this point? In the GitHub repo, there's a links.txt file, and that has a link to the IIS authorization, like a couple of different blog posts about how to do it. Let's real quick jump into here, and they have like best practices here. Deployment to production, sorry. So making ASP.NET applications always running. So Hangfire has a little bit of write-up about this, you know, how you might want to do it. There's also another blog that I recommend looking at that's a little more detailed about what you can do. It's in the links. It's a way to keep your site always running. You know, you turn off automatic recycling of the app pool. Now, when you do that, if you do automatically recycle your app pool, it's really awesome if you have memory leaks because, well, it just kills your app and restarts. So you don't know that you have a memory leak in your ASP.NET application. So I do recommend the first time you turn that off, automatic recycling of your app pool, that you run it in development, and then you monitor it extensively, the memory usage of your website in production, because you may have memory leaks, right? We kind of had a memory leak when we first did this at Agoda. It was a little interesting. It was not really, we weren't doing a piece of input validation. And well, we were, but we allowed them to put a date range of 9,999 years. So we just go off and run that. And it would just sit there, and it would eat up a ton of memory. It would keep loading all these objects for 9,999 years. And so we had, it would take days. So the first time we turned it off, that automatic recycling, the recycling would always clear this problem, right? But once we turned it off, we started seeing the memory usage growing, right? We actually had to do a dump of the process, look in there, see what it was, figure it out. Once we got that going, we were able to say, fix it. And then we were able to turn on that not recycling. But that's just a warning I want to give you because, you know, especially if you've inherited an old code base that you don't know everything that's running in there, you might have some issues. But that's the only really big downside is this automatic recycling and automatic stopping of your app pool. It stops the process. It clears out the memory, restarts it from scratch. So not doing that is like having a program run for hopefully months until your next deploy. But there's some good links in there about getting that always running. I did have one other thing I was going to show you real quick. That's an aside, and then we'll go ahead to see if there's any more questions. So this is still running. So I'm going to go back to the site. I'm going to log out. I'm going to log in. And then we're going to come up here and click on this. We're going to see the SQL because we added the entity framework, and the identity is using entity framework core. And this is the SQL that just ran to log me into the site. So that's another cool thing about Mini Profiler. If I want to see the SQL that Entity Framework is running, how long did it take? It can all show up here in Mini Profiler. And you can just have this set to go on your development or your staging site and not be available in production, or only available for authorized users. Remember how I did that with the dashboard option, right? You can say just show Mini Profiler for, I don't know what the impact of having this running, like watching your site does take some resources, so I don't know what the impact of having this running in production is. But start out running it in your dev environment. You can kind of, I mean, this is really cool for code you have running in, that you've compiled and you've got out there. The other thing I do use that I'll put a shout out for is if I'm trying to learn SQL from my Entity Framework is I use LinkPad. So if you haven't heard of LinkPad, it's a little tool that lets you run link queries right in a little UI, and it'll tell you the SQL and everything for the LinkPad. And I've got the pro version. I highly recommend it. That's it. I did want to mention that, circle back around that I mentioned that. So for me, Hangfire has been awesome. We have some scheduled tasks that eventually will migrate into Hangfire. But when I had to do some stuff where I had to sync some stuff with Salesforce, and then I had to also check some logs, I didn't want to write a scheduled task. I didn't want to write another service. I just wrote it in my website. It's all in the same code base, in the same repo, in the same project, and all the jobs run. They retry, they survive a failure. If the site goes down and we reboot it, the jobs are still there. And they log it all for me with my built-in logger, and I just have a CloudWatch alarm on the logs. Any more questions? Any observations? I think we've got a drawing.
Thanks, Tim. That was really, really awesome. Awesome stuff. So we do have a drawing for a book this evening. This is the DevOps Handbook. Excellent, excellent read.
Is that the one with Jez Humble?
Yes.
Yeah. I've got that on my,
Yeah, I've got it on Audible. I listened to it twice.
I've got it on Audible, yeah. I'm not all the way through it, but he's just, everything I've seen from Jez Humble.
Yeah, really, really good stuff. So I'll let you do the honors and pick our winner.
Awesome. And we have 340103.
Excellent.
All right. Thank you.
Congrats. All right. So with that, thanks, Tim. Really appreciate it. We will be actually we'll be at Suncoast Developers Guild for the launch party for Visual Studio 2019. We're still working out the details, whether that's a noon to 1, noon to 2, or an all-day thing or an evening thing. So we're going to publish the details in the next week or two. With that, we're still looking for more speakers, more topics. If you want to volunteer yourself or a coworker, then we'd be happy to take a name and get you posted.
Yeah, well, on that, there's 2 things. One is that's on Tuesday, right? April 2nd is a Tuesday, so that kind of works out really well. And then 2, if you did want to do a presentation and you wanted to get started, they did provide, the .NET Foundation provides a lot of presentations, all the code, the slides, and everything at the .NET Foundation site to help speakers get started. So, you know, maybe if you don't necessarily have a topic, you could look there and you wanted to speak at this event.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'd love to have you join us and speak, or just join us and hang out.
Install Visual Studio.
Install Visual Studio 2019. Provide the feedback. The team's been doing phenomenal work. So it's my personal IDE of choice. So with that, thank you all for coming. We'll be here and Suncoast Developers Guild in and around the community. If you're interested, do head over to Orlando for Orlando Code Camp at the end of the month on March 30th. And then this evening, join us for drinks on your own time. So we'll let Speaker's Choice tonight. We'll head up.
Cool. Where's a good place for microbrews?
We usually just do like the Avenue or
I know
any of the local
the
bars here.
What's the game?